There's been some banner research on suicide, and it's recent. It was reported, I think, at an IACP meeting, if I'm not mistaken. And the people that made, oh, I'm going to give you this. Oh, did I forgot you. Can I get one of these? Can I get one? Let's talk about what the research was. I actually don't think the person reporting the research was actually as enamored with this as I am. But the research was basically part of another whole study. And it said that the person committing suicide, 90-some% of them, and I think it was like high in the 90s, make the final decision 30 minutes before they kill themselves, within the 30 minutes before they kill themselves. That's amazing. That's amazing when you think about that. 90% make the decision to kill themselves within the last 30 minutes of their life. 30 minutes. That to me means I have to do an intervention that lasts 30 minutes. And that's great. That's fantastic. All I need is a good 30 minutes, and I don't happen to have this anymore. Okay. All I need is to have a good 30 minutes, and I can help them. So in the process of going through this, I started working on formulas and logical flow of suicide to figure out what it is that I had to do. Now this is for the nerds. This is what Danny's going to talk about, the suicide formula we came up with. This is sort of the nerdy kind of things because they're graphic. I need to stop the logical flow of suicide. There's some kind of problem or event. Ah, shit.
Move it back. Push the down button.
There's some kind of problem or event. It goes to a thought. That thought isn't a suicidal thought yet. That thought is things like, wow, this sucks. Wow, this isn't good. This is terrible. From there, it goes to the thoughts of escape, then the suicidal thought, and then the decision to commit the suicidal act. So really the flow has 5 steps or 6 steps, 4 steps. Problem and thought, escape, suicidal thought, and then the suicidal act. But if you look at the flow, there's really a lot of different ways this could go. A lot of different ways this can go. And all you need is one thing that'll pause them in that 30 minutes. One thing that'll pause their actions in that 30 minutes. And you may be able to get that person in. And I don't know, has anybody ever treated a patient that killed themselves? You have? Mm-hmm. I doubt that doesn't feel good. I doubt that.
No, it doesn't. In different ones. One is where I brought the whole family in and said, he's going to kill himself if something doesn't happen. I've done everything I know how to do. I've hospitalized him, we've treated him, we've done everything else. We know of nothing else to do. So unless you guys can help us with him, he is going to kill himself. It's only a matter of how long it takes. I don't know, we don't, and so if you guys have any great ideas, please give them to us. We don't know what else to do with it.
Okay.
And sure enough, about 4 months later, he took off all his clothes, smoked a lot of pot, took off all his clothes, lay down in the middle of the busiest interstate at rush hour. Got run over about 8 times.
Okay. But that was 4 hours later. Was he your patient? Or 4 months later?
4 months later.
He wasn't your patient at that point?
Yeah, I kept him.
You kept working with him?
The family. I wanted to be on record with everybody. I didn't know. I knew of nothing else to do. I had done everything we knew to do to divert him from this track.
In my experience, there's been nobody working in our office who's killed themselves. We had one person who went and killed somebody else, but there's nobody who killed himself. And I think it's because we really have an attitude, if we can get them in, we can fix them. If we can get, because you know, the people we're dealing with are cops. They're not out there. They're not putting themselves down in the middle of interstates. So we just need to interrupt this flow. I sat down with Surgeon General Koop. He wanted to do something with police officers and suicide. His big push was suicide and so forth. And this is an interesting story. We presented this stuff at the APA, at the last FBI seminar on suicide. So the FBI sort of adapted this program, along with a couple other programs that we were talking about, but they adapted this program for their suicidal patients. Suffolk County, the superior officers, decided they wanted to have somebody from the FBI to talk about suicide. So they brought this guy up at great expense, Dr. Diamond, brought him up at great expense to talk about suicide in police officers and how they could have a suicide prevention program. We went down to Dr. Koop. I became the psychologist that was working with the police officers and so forth. Lo and behold, he stands up in front of the, remember we deal with the line officers. He stands up in front of the superior officers and he says, well, I wanted to let you know this stuff was created by Dr. Ohlmiller. I think he's a psychologist up here somewhere. Problem and thought. Problem or event, if you're going to change the thought here at this level, you start working with what Danny was saying, the ABCs. Okay, is this desperate? Is this a temporary state? Do we really have to get to the point where we're desperate about this? Is this awful? All the things Danny was talking about. If you're going to work at the person at this level, at stage 1, start working with this thought. How bad is it? How bad is it? We don't want the person to go down to escape. We want to bring them in here. So we want to start making suggestions. What can we do to improve this situation? Before we get desperate, what can we do to improve the situation? Or maybe it's better to ignore it. Let's ignore it and find out where it's going to go in 3 weeks. Sometimes that's the best approach you can have, particularly if this doesn't work. Act to improve. What can we do to help this person through this stage? If we ignore this for 3 weeks, we'll come back in 3 weeks, then we'll start thinking about what's going to happen. Come to therapy, come a couple times a week, but let's just try to figure out what's the best approach to this. That'll take them out of going down this route, which is I got to get out of here. If you do go down this route, you look at these things, you say, okay, that isn't working. Now they're into the escape mode. How do we keep them from going to the suicidal thought? Geographic or emotional withdrawal? Well, you know, maybe the best thing is to just not care about it anymore for a period of time. Most suicides are created by? Anybody?
Created by.
Police suicides?
Family stressors,
Family stressors like?
divorce,
Exactly. Next?
Loss.
Law?
financial stressors.
Nope. Nope.
Internal
Hmm?
investigation.
Oh.
Yeah. Internal investigation. They are so far above everything else for police suicides. Not your general population. Not your general population. It seems the general population can handle divorce a lot better than police officers. Talking about suicide. Police suicide rate higher or lower? Higher. Rachel says higher.
Lower.
Lower.
The same if you control for, if you.
She's got it.
Sex
What's that? She says the same if you control for
and age and sex and.
age and sex,
ethnicity.
and lower if you control for gun owners. I mean, you think about it, a cop's got a gun. Cops have guns. They're making the decision in the last 30 seconds, 30 minutes. Okay, here, 30 minutes. I'm going to make this decision. I'm going to kill myself. Ways most cops kill themselves? Anybody?
75%, I think.
75% of the guns. What's the next highest? Hanging. And pills are somewhere down lower. Now, I'm not sure that data is a little older, Jim. We were talking.
So it's pretty accurate still.
It's probably pretty accurate, but I imagine the pills are increasing, and that's mainly because of the opiates. The opiates are just Oxycontins and things like that are just.
We still haven't seen too many that have died from opiates.
What you want to do when they say escape? Once they make that decision that they have to escape, you want to move them either toward geographic or emotional withdrawal. Hey, you're saying that your wife is treating you like this, starting to do that to you. Why don't we stop caring about her? Why don't we just look at her and say, she's not part of my life anymore? Well, you know, she's going to take the kids. The kids will come back. We'll get the kids to come back. Stick with me. But don't do anything desperate, because you do something desperate, you're going to lose everything. But you know, if I shoot myself, cops, if I shoot myself, what are they thinking about their wife?
She'll suffer.
Right, why?
Guilt.
Money? Does she not get money?
Right, money. They're saying if I kill myself, my wife won't get my money, won't get my insurance, won't get my pension. Where do you go with that?
Your kids want to eat her?
That's the big thing. Do you want to devastate your kids? Do you want to devastate your kids? Do you want to? There's more people involved than just your wife. You got a mother and father. You got brothers and sisters. There's a lot more people involved here. Is that effective? No. But you have to say it. It's effective to help them emotionally withdraw. Let's just make your wife unimportant. How can we make your wife? Well, she's doing this, she's doing that, and she's doing that because she wants to piss you off. Let's make her unimportant. Or geographic, you know what you can do? You're going to be single. Why don't you move to Hawaii with Herb Gutman? That's what I always say. I got a friend in Hawaii. He'll put you up for a couple years. The truth is, you can tell the person, hey, let's look at your life after divorce. Right now, you go home, you're being nagged at, you're being yelled and screamed at, your money's going out the window. If you get divorced, you're going to go home, you're going to date a couple different girls. If you don't like her, you get rid of her. Where's the loss here? You're going to be able to travel all over the place. Oh, I'm not going to have enough money to do anything. You heard that before? I'm not going to have enough money to do anything. Well, here's the secret. Cops after divorce do better than their partners. They do much better financially. Usually, because this is a male cop, I always say to the male cops, what does a guy need to live on? You know, if we can get rid of your house, we can get rid of all the endorments and you give your wife 25% for the 2 kids, you're going to live like a freaking king. You know, you're only losing 25%. Now what are you losing? Well, I get $200 a week. Well, you're going to live like a king. You're going to have a lot more money. You can start out your life and live simply. Geographic.
3 minutes.
Suicidal thought to suicidal act. This is the hardest stage. Once they get down to here, it's harder to divert them. You can either work with them to ignore it, or I think the only way you can go is say, let's reconsider what you're talking about doing. I usually don't get people to this stage. Let's reconsider what you're going to do. In a suicidal situation, always have the person make a plan. If they're talking suicide when they're with you, make sure they're coming back the next day. Even if it's for a half hour, even if it's for 20 minutes, make sure they're coming back the next day. Call them during the day if you don't think that they can last that long. If you take them to the hospital and have them put in the hospital's not going to take them nowadays because of insurance. Because they're going to go to the hospital and say, I wasn't really thinking about killing myself. If we look at the logical flow and say, there's a lot of options here. Because we usually get them pretty early in suicide. There's a lot of options here. We can stop them from getting into that 30 minutes. If they're in that 30 minutes, we can usually get them into a different path. And like I say, in our offices, we have never had, and we've seen a lot of cops, we have never had a person commit suicide.